Good Wednesday morning to everyone from the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm meteorologist Donald Jones. Ta-da! It's me. We have the latest 10:30 a.m. Update from, 10 a.m. update, I should say, from the National Hurricane Center regarding Hurricane Francine. Francine is a strong Category 1 hurricane this morning with maximum sustained winds near 90 miles per hour. That's actually right on the money for where the Hurricane Center was predicting these winds to kind of peak out about 24 hours ago. They have seemingly peaked out, at least at the moment, because the Hurricane Center has indicated that some wind shear is increasing across the storm. That was also anticipated. And so we don't expect much more in the way of any additional intensification prior to the storm making landfall, which looks like now it's going to be sometime late this afternoon. I want to start off here rather than going into the briefing straight up. We're going to start with a radar view real quick, just to give you an idea of what Francine looks like and where that bad girl is going. Let me go ahead and put this into motion here. You can see the eye of the storm, essentially. Down there, you can see it's a fairly wide eye. I tried to do a measurement on it before we came on the air here a short time ago, and it's somewhere between about 30 and 40 miles wide. So it's a very wide and somewhat oval-shaped eye. It's not a typical circle. So we were looking at this yesterday. It is a little bit displaced, not displaced, but a little bit asymmetrical, if you will, compared to a normal storm. And it is pretty wide. The other point of note here is notice the lack of rainfall on the southern and southeastern sides of that eye. That's an indication that the storm is also drawing in some drier air. So that is another reason why we could potentially see, if not a weakening trend, at least a maintenance of the winds all the way up until landfall. We're not expecting much in the way of additional intensification. You can see we are looking at those bands moving inland across parts of south central and southeast Louisiana. A lot of rain ongoing, and we're already starting to see those tropical storm force winds move inland in and around Vermilion Bay. If you haven't experienced tropical storm force winds yet in that area, you probably will here beginning within the next couple of hours or so. The hurricane force winds are confined to a fairly narrow band inside that eye wall, kind of on the northern and western side there. So even though the storm is relatively large, we're only looking at those hurricane force winds themselves in a fairly narrow band, only about 20 miles or so on the northern and western side of the storm. So that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on across the area with the storm itself. We are looking at landfall still expected sometime later on this afternoon, probably late afternoon into early evening at this point. Let's go ahead and jump into our main part of our briefing now and talk about impacts. I do have the latest parish-by-parish breakdowns. We'll talk about that. Those are actually already posted on our social media pages. So if you're tired of listening to my voice and just want to see that, you're welcome to scroll down on Facebook and or X. And those are available for your perusal. Otherwise, we are going to discuss them here in just a couple of moments. Again, Francine is a strong Category 1 hurricane, maximum sustained winds presently near 90 miles per hour, and we expect them to stay that way, if not perhaps get slightly weaker prior to the storm making landfall later this afternoon. The storm is experiencing some increasing wind shear. That's denoted on the visible satellite, and we're also seeing an increase in that dry air that we talked about just a minute ago on the radar. That's why the southern side of the storm is almost non-existent from a precipitation perspective, because it is sucking some drier air into that southern eye wall and eye. We are still looking at Francine making landfall somewhere near Morgan City later on this afternoon. That hasn't changed a whole lot since last night. We're only talking about maybe a mile or two one way or the other for the actual landfall point. So still looking at landfall near Morgan City later this afternoon. Taking a look at the visible satellite imagery this morning. This image is it's about an hour old. I took this a little while ago, but it does kind of give you an indication just of you see the kind of trying to describe how to describe it without actually saying the name. It's the central dense overcast, essentially the thick layer of clouds in and around the eye of the storm. You don't actually see an eye in the satellite, but you can see the very large circular mass of dense clouds kind of over it. That is where the eye wall is, and that is where the strongest winds and rain are located. You can see the vast majority of the cloud cover is displaced off to the north and east. That's an indication of increasing wind shear across the storm. And again, this was an hour ago, so that wind shear may be even more prevalent now than it was when that satellite image was taken. But all in all, the environment for the storm to continue to develop is deteriorating. So it's not a very favorable environment for additional intensification. We may actually see a little bit in the way of weakening just prior to landfall. Here's the 10 a.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Again, maximum sustained winds currently near 90 miles per hour. The storm is moving to the northeast at about 13 miles per hour, so it is continuing to gradually pick up speed. That was also expected. And we're looking at between about 13 and 15 miles per hour now expected at landfall. That is going to continue. The storm is not expected to slow down materially or stall. So this is a storm that's going to keep moving, and it is therefore going to be out of here for the most part by late tonight or early Thursday morning. So this is not a storm that we're going to be dealing with for a long period of time. That's certainly some good news. So you see the point by 7 a.m. Thursday, the center of circulation is in southern Mississippi, and then by 7 p.m. Thursday, northern Mississippi into eastern parts of Tennessee. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we won't see a few rain bands kind of linger on the southern side. That seems to almost always be the case. As storms decay, we wind up getting one or two rain bands that move kind of north along with it, and a very narrow band of training setting up across parts of the region. So that is certainly a possibility. That could linger into Thursday, but the damaging wind potential is going to be out of here by late tonight. This is a look at the latest warnings that are in effect across the region. The only real material change to this from last night, the hurricane warning that was previously in effect for Lafayette Parish has been downgraded to a tropical storm warning, as we're no longer expecting hurricane force winds in Lafayette. Hurricane warnings remain in effect for Vermilion, Iberia, St. Martin, and St. Mary parishes, with tropical storm warnings remaining in effect for Calcasieu, Cameron, Jeff Davis, Allen, Acadia, Evangeline, St. Landry, Avoyelles, and now Lafayette parishes, as well as we are still expecting at least minimal tropical storm force winds, that's 40 miles per hour or greater, in those areas. This is a look at the latest forecast as far as maximum wind gusts go. We are, as I just mentioned, expecting at least low-end tropical storm force wind gusts in the areas that are still under the tropical storm warning. Hurricane force wind conditions still possible across parts of Vermilion, St. Martin, St. Mary, and Iberia parishes. The highest overall wind gusts are going to be down towards the Morgan City area, right in the vicinity of landfall. That's where we're expecting those 90-mile-per-hour winds to move ashore. They're not going to get very far ashore, roughly probably only 20, 30 miles or so before the storm begins to break down, and we see those wind speeds come down significantly. So the highest overall winds, those 90-mile-per-hour winds, are going to be in a very narrow band in and around the Morgan City area. So not everyone around Vermilion Bay is going to see 90-mile-an-hour winds. It's going to be a pretty narrow swath of the strongest winds. We do still have a flood watch in effect. This has been kind of trimmed back a little bit here this morning. And I know it looks kind of weird how it's kind of shaped up right now, but we did have some significant rainfall across parts of Rapides and Avoyelles parishes early this morning. So we wanted to keep them in the flood watch because there is still the possibility, now that they've already seen several inches of rain, it won't take a whole lot more for flash flooding to begin. That's why this graphic kind of looks funky, where it has Rapides Parish in it, but it excludes Evangeline and Allen parishes. But still looking at a flood watch for Eastern Cameron, Acadia, Vermilion, Lafayette, St. Landry, of course, Rapides and Avoyelles, St. Martin, St. Mary, and Iberia parishes. This is going to go through Thursday morning, and you can see it does continue to extend all the way across southeast Louisiana and into parts of southern Mississippi as well. Here is a look at our forecast rainfall totals. You can see very high rainfall totals in and around the Vermilion Bay area, but much lower rainfall totals west of there. And we talked about this yesterday, how we were going to have this very tight gradient between areas of very high rainfall totals and areas of very low rainfall totals. And that graphic pretty much sums it up. We're expecting anywhere between about 6 to 8 inches in and around the Vermilion Bay area. But once you get to as far east as, say, the Jennings, Crawley area along I-10, we're looking at generally less than an inch, and points further west than that. Parts of southeast Texas may not even see any rain at all. Taking a look again at the radar out there right now. Let me zoom northwards a little bit. You see there are a few showers up around Tyler County. Those really aren't amounting to a whole lot. They're just kind of some very light rainfall. And that's really all you're probably going to see across southeast Texas as far as rainfall totals go. You can see there is a band of light activity moving along the I-10 corridor right now, but that's not going to amount to a whole lot in terms of precipitation totals either. So the overall, in terms of numbers, we're not looking at a whole lot in the way of precipitation totals, essentially, once you get about 5 miles or so west of Lafayette Parish. Storm surge hazards still remain in effect for eastern parts of Cameron, or storm surge warnings, I should say, for eastern Cameron, Vermilion, Lower St. Martin, and St. Mary parishes. We do have coastal flood advisories in effect for Lower Jefferson and western Cameron. The difference between the two is a storm surge warning, the area highlighted in purple there, are areas where we're expecting more than 3 feet of storm surge, and a coastal flood advisory, which is the bright green, means that we're expecting 1 to 3 feet of storm surge, so lower overall storm surge in the advisory area. Here's a look at our peak storm surge forecast. This hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot, especially in the vicinity of the landfall. It has come down somewhat on the western side, as is always the case, because we don't see nearly the storm surge on the western side of the storm. So from Freeport to Cameron, we're looking at 1 to 3 feet of storm surge. Between Cameron and Intracoastal City, 3 to 5 feet. From Intracoastal City to Port Fourchon, 5 to 10 feet. That's the area that is most susceptible to storm surge. This does include the areas in and around Vermilion Bay. And the storm surge will reach its peak as the storm makes landfall. So we've already have some minor storm surge ongoing. This is going to continue to increase through the day. At landfall late this afternoon, early this evening, that's when we're going to see our highest overall storm surge values. And then storm surge will begin to push back out as those winds shift back around. We've got right now a southeasterly wind into Vermilion Bay. Once the storm gets past and those winds switch around, we're going to be looking at a northwesterly wind that is going to start pushing the water right back out again. We do still have a low-end tornado risk, effectively for east of the Lafayette area, with the highest risk essentially along and east of the Morgan City area, and that is along and east of that center of circulation. The vast majority of tornadoes that we see in tropical systems do occur east of the center of circulation. So that's why the highest overall risk is going to be to the east of where the storm makes landfall. Roughly west of Lafayette, we don't have any tornado threat to speak of. So if you're west of the Lafayette area, fear not in terms of tornadoes, because we are not expecting any. Our next briefing will be 4:30 p.m. this afternoon. I just realized again, I forgot to update the timing at the top, so it still says yesterday. But trust me, all of this information is up to date. One of these days, I'm going to actually get the times correct on here. But anyway, we are going to do another one of these briefings, 4:30 p.m. this afternoon. We will have another complete update from the National Hurricane Center by 4 p.m. That should be about the time the storm is getting close to making landfall, if not having made landfall already at that point. So we'll be able to begin to watch in real time the observations and what's actually happening at that point. We are going to do our parish by parish and county by county breakdowns here of expected impacts next, and then we will, of course, answer any questions you have thereafter. If you're not interested in that, you are welcome to head on out. If you are interested in it, well, great news. We're about to start it right now. Let me go ahead and jump into it. And again, if you missed this, these have already been posted on our social media pages, so you can just scroll on down either on Facebook or X. Unfortunately, we can't post graphics on YouTube, but they are on our Facebook and X pages, so you can view them in more detail and more slowly, if you so desire, on there just as soon as, well, actually, you can do it right now. But let's go ahead and go through it here. Vermilion Parish, starting off, we're looking at 50 to 60 mile per hour winds gusting to 70. Storm surge of 5 to 10 feet, rainfall 6 to 8 inches with up to 16 inches possible, a marginal 2 to 4% risk of tornadoes, and we will probably see some power outages, around Vermilion Parish. Next up is Lafayette. We're looking at 30 to 40 mile per hour winds gusting to 50, 3 to 4 inches of rainfall with up to 8 inches possible. A marginal risk of tornadoes, that's a 2 to 4% chance. I'm not ruling out the possibility of a few power outages across Lafayette, but we're not expecting too much in the way of power outages. For Iberia Parish, 60 to 70 mile an hour winds gusting to 80, storm surge 5 to 10 feet, rainfall 6 to 8 inches with up to 16 inches possible. We are looking at a 2 to 4% marginal risk of tornadoes, and we are expecting some power outages with those hurricane force winds in and around Iberia Parish. For St. Martin, 60 to 70 mile per hour winds gusting to 80, storm surge of 5 to 10 feet, 6 to 8 inches of rainfall with up to 16 inches possible, a 2 to 4% marginal risk for tornadoes, and we are looking at some power outages expected across parts of St. Martin Parish due to those hurricane force winds. For St. Mary, 70 to 80 mile per hour winds gusting to 90, storm surge 5 to 10 feet, rainfall totals of 6 to 8 inches with up to 16 inches possible, a slight risk of tornadoes around St. Mary, essentially from Morgan City eastward, so that's a 5 to 10% chance, and we are expecting some power outages with that, with those gusts to 90 miles per hour. You are kind of ground zero. That is where we are expecting the eye of the storm to move ashore. For Evangeline Parish, 30 to 40 mile per hour winds gusting to 50, 1 to 3 inches of rainfall with up to 6 inches possible. No tornado threat in Evangeline. We could see a few power outages, but I'm not expecting a whole lot. For Avoyelles, 30 to 40 mile per hour winds gusting to 50, a half inch up to 2 inches of rainfall with, well, between a half inch and 2 inches of rainfall with up to 4 inches possible. A few power outages possible across Avoyelles with those tropical storm force wind gusts. For St. Landry, 30 to 40 mile per hour winds gusting to 50, 2 to 3 inches of rainfall with up to 6 inches possible. Again, a few isolated power outages possible across St. Landry, but not expecting a whole lot. For Cameron, 30 to 40 mile per hour winds gusting to 50 right along the coastline. This isn't going to get too far inland, but if you're in Cameron proper, Holly Beach, over that way, you could see some gusts to 50 miles per hour. Storm surge between 2 and 5 feet. Rainfall totals a 1/4 inch to 4 inches with up to 8 inches possible. That's going to be generally East Cameron. There's a pretty sharp gradient across Cameron Parish with very low rainfall totals expected across Western Cameron and considerably higher rainfall totals expected across East Cameron. Some power outages are possible in the city of Cameron and again in and around the Holly Beach area where those higher gusts are expected to be. Calcasieu Parish, 20 to 30 mile per hour winds gusting to 40. Rainfall totals aren't going to be very high, 1/10 of an inch to a half inch. Not ruling out the possibility of a few power outages, but I don't think we're going to have much in the way of power outages around Calcasieu. For Beauregard, 20 to 25 mile per hour winds gusting to 30. 1/10 of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch of rainfall totals. I don't think that's going to be enough to cause any kind of significant power outages across Beauregard. For Vernon, 15 to 20 mile per hour winds gusting to 25. A 1/4 inch to a half inch of rainfall. Really not going to amount to a whole lot in Vernon Parish. I know it says possible street flooding on there, but at a half an inch, we're not expecting much in the way of street flooding. Jeff Davis Parish, 30 to 40 mile per hour winds gusting to 50, a half inch to an inch of rainfall with up to 2 inches possible. Could see a couple of power outages across Jeff Davis with some of those stronger wind gusts, but that should be about it. Allen Parish, 20 to 25 mile per hour winds gusting to 30, a 1/4 to a half inch of rainfall. Not expecting much in the way of power outages across Allen. For Rapides, 15 to 25 mile per hour winds gusting to 30, half inch to an inch of rainfall across Rapides. Not expecting any significant hazards other than just some additional rainfall in addition to what you already saw earlier this morning. For Acadia, 30 to 40 mile per hour winds gusting to 50, 1 to 4 inches of rainfall with up to 8 inches possible. We could see a few power outages across Acadia, but I'm not expecting a whole lot. For Newton County, 10 to 15 mile per hour winds gusting to 20. That's just another day in paradise. A 1/10 to a 1/4 inch of rainfall. Most of that's probably going to fall with that band we just saw a few minutes ago. So we're not expecting much in the way of flooding across Newton. For Jefferson County, 20 to 30 mile per hour winds gusting to 40. Again, this is going to be along the immediate coastline. I don't expect these winds to get too far inland. So I would not expect 40 mile per hour winds in Beaumont. This is just going to be right along the coast, maybe near the Port Arthur area. That's going to be about it. 2 to 4 feet of storm surge, again, right along the coastline. Rainfall totals between a 1/4 to a half inch. We could see a few power outages right along the coast, but again, I don't expect it to get very far inland, so I'm not expecting power outages in Beaumont or those areas kind of off the immediate coastline. For Orange County, 15 to 20 mile per hour winds gusting to 30, 2 to 4 feet of surge right along the coast. Rainfall totals between a 1/4 and a half inch. For Hardin County, 10 to 15 mile per hour winds gusting to 20. Rainfall totals between a 1/4 and a half inch. Tyler County, 10 to 15, gust 20. Rainfall totals between a half inch to 1 inch. And finally, Jasper County, 10 to 15 mile per hour winds gusting to 20, and rainfall totals between a half inch and an inch. So no real significant impacts expected anywhere across southeast Texas, except perhaps right along the immediate coastline of Jefferson County, where we may see a little bit in the way of some slightly stronger winds and some coastal flooding from those initial winds out of the southeast ahead of the front. So that's what we have here this morning for you from the National Weather Service. If you do have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them here. Let's go ahead and jump into those now. So feel free to throw them in our comment section, and I'll be happy to answer them. Let me back up just a few minutes here and see if we do have any. Patricia asked, does Franklin look like it is going to be within the hurricane since the eye is 40 miles wide? I'm assuming you're asking about the hurricane force winds, because, yeah, Franklin is definitely going to be within the hurricane itself. Are you going to be within the hurricane force winds? You're probably going to be very close to it. So even if you don't see hurricane force wind gusts explicitly, you'll be looking at some very strong tropical storm force winds. So it's hard to tell the difference, just either looking outside or walking outside. You need some wind measuring equipment. Mona says, after these for the 10 a.m. update, it says 9:26. Yeah, that's because I got it out a little early. That was just me being on the ball this morning. Natalie's loving the cooler temperatures so she can bake. That's a way to take advantage of a maybe not so great situation. Yeah, it's certainly cooler. That's I guess the silver lining, if you will. We had that cool front come through, and now we've got this tropical system. So we're way below normal in terms of temperatures for the first couple of weeks of September here. Tasha asked, do we have any more rain in Lake Charles for today? It doesn't look like it. We probably, what's the wrong one? We probably will see some more rain. You can see there actually is some shower activity beginning to work generally towards the Lake Charles area. I think eventually we may see one of those outer rain bands roll through. It's not going to amount to a whole lot, but there will be, I think, perhaps a rain band later at some point this afternoon. But again, it's not going to amount to a whole lot in terms of rainfall accumulation. And it's not something that's going to last all day, certainly. Jim says, Donald, would my hurricane gumbo leftovers freeze until the next one? I'm going to say no, because I'm hoping the next one isn't going to be for years, and by that point your gumbo will have gone bad. So go ahead and eat it now in the hopes that it'll be many, many years before we have to deal with another hurricane. Hope says a lot of people back in St. Mary are being told it's not going to be a direct hit to them, that it is going more east. Can you clarify for them? Sure, I'll be happy to do that. Let me back up. And you see that right there? That's the National Hurricane Center's forecast graphic. It's actually been very good lately. And you see where it's making landfall at? Morgan City. You know where Morgan City is? It's in St. Mary Parish. So yeah, you are looking at a direct hit in St. Mary Parish later on this afternoon. Again, we're looking at a fairly wide eye of roughly 30 to 40 miles wide or thereabouts. So direct hit is kind of a relative term. St. Mary Parish itself is, I think, only about 30-ish miles wide. So it's certainly possible that St. Mary will be directly hit, as will the surrounding parishes. It's just going to depend as far as exactly where the Hurricane Center says that eye begins to move ashore. But yes, as far as any kind of forecasting goes for the last 12 hours or so, since last night, or really since yesterday afternoon, St. Mary Parish has been the landfall point and continues to be. Big Juan asks, is Houston going to get some rain from Hurricane Francine? No, probably not. Hibiscus says, do you recommend me traveling to the eye of the storm like when people travel for the eclipse? I want to experience that. No, Hibiscus flower, I don't recommend that because unlike an eclipse, hurricanes kill people. I've never heard of anybody dying from an eclipse, but people do die in 90, 100 mile an hour winds. So I'm going to recommend you don't do that. If you do choose to do that, you essentially do so at your own risk. Akieta says, do you think NOLA will be okay for Saints versus Eagles next Sunday? Yes. This storm is not going to linger around very long. We are going to be looking at it getting out of here. Full screen there. So by Thursday evening, the storm's already in eastern Tennessee. Now, the remaining impacts, are there still going to be power outages across southeast Louisiana? Flash flooding, certainly going to be a possibility. So there may be some lingering impacts, but the storm itself will be long gone by this weekend. Eric says, please use flashlights instead of candles if you lose power to keep from being a fire risk. So charge your smartphones as they usually have a flashlight option piece. That's a good bit of advice. I mean, candles are better than nothing, but yeah, definitely much less fire risk with flashlights should you lose power. Stacy says, you going in the eye is putting all of our emergency personnel at risk trying to get you out when you get in trouble. That's exactly true. And that's why I said you go at your own risk, because during landfalling tropical systems, oftentimes emergency services are not available. So you may be in a situation where you need help, and emergency services are not going to risk their own lives to come and save you should you put yourself in a bad situation negligently. All right, not seeing too many more questions at the moment, so I think we will go ahead and wrap up our briefing for the time being. We are going to do one more briefing, at least with this storm. It's going to be 4:30 p.m. this afternoon. That will follow the 4 p.m. update from the National Hurricane Center with the new latest advisory info. If you think of a question once we're done with our briefing, or if I missed yours for some reason, feel free to shoot me a direct message on Facebook. I'll be happy to answer your question that way. You can also email me. The email is on your screen. It's my name, donald.jones@noaa.gov, NOAA.gov. You can also give us a call here at our office, area code 337-477-5285. I just got a text message from CenterPoint Energy telling me there's a hurricane coming. Yeah. Who would have thought? So we're also on X. You can send us a message on X. You can also send us a message on Instagram. So lots of ways to get in touch with us if you do have a question still, and we'll be happy to answer it. Again, our next briefing, 4:30 p.m. this afternoon. In the meantime, everyone stay safe, stay dry. Those of you in the path of the eye, now is about the time to be hunkering down. You are going to be looking at, if not already, tropical storm force winds. They will begin very shortly, and then those hurricane force winds will follow this afternoon. We'll talk to you again this afternoon.